So, as most of you people know, I was born in Los Angeles, on the east side of LA, General Hospital. I was raised in the west side of Los Angeles, being that my dad lived over off of Pico and Magnolia, which is the Pico Union district. It's known as the west side of LA. It's where like the gang 18th Street started right there off of Pico and 18th, Pico Boulevard and 18th. Right back there in that alley right there. That's where they used to kick it. Crazy Riders started right there down the street. We have Westside Playboys, Harpies on the other side, down by the park. Then you have Clanton up the street with Westside White Fans, Rebels, all that's right there in that area. MS, they started right there. On Pico Boulevard as well, when you all started coming from El Salvador. All those neighborhoods all congregate right there in that area, the west side of Pico Union area. Rebels is up a little farther, going towards Hollywood, up that way. But you have them guys all over Clanton, west side Clanton. They're all right there, you know. I used to kick it a lot with the dudes from Playboys and from Harpies as well, because when I was fighting pro, my sparring partner was Javier de la Cruz, El Russo from Harpies, and he was a good welterweight fighter. And that was one of my daily sparring partners, him and Jaime Garza, the champ, the BBC champ at the Main Street Gym in downtown LA, where we all trained. There's a lot of good fighters out of LA and those neighborhoods that I just mentioned. Anyway, I started kicking it with the vatos from 18, because my sister, she used to run with all them dudes from 18. She was from 18th Street. They used to call her La Goofy. She had her hair dyed in the front, you know, wearing trench coat, her Levi's with the little cuff at the bottom all creased up, going to King Junior High. That's where all the dudes from the West Side 18 used to go to that school. So we knew all of them. They used to all come to my pad. Big Cisco and all of them, Sailor, Johnny Reyes, Sal Reyes, his brother, Frankie and Bobby, all of them cats used to come to our pad. All the OGs from 18 used to all come to the pad because of my sister. That was her homeboys. So, you know, a lot of them would ride on my shoes, on my little Chucks, my little Chuck Taylors. They would ride 18th Street on the soul and all that. So, I mean, I was like running around with them, but I had never got jumped in like my sister had. When we moved to Long Beach, that's when I got jumped into Eastside Longo, the neighborhood in Long Beach. And at that time, we were going to war with the dudes from the West Side Longo, the East Side, my side, and the West Side. We didn't get along. We were at war, so I have a bullet lodged in my spine from that war when I got shot. But anyway, as a 14-year-old kid, that lifestyle, I just wouldn't recommend it for the faint of heart, because you have to live a very violent way of life. And you see a lot of violence around you all the time. People getting shot, killed, stabbed, shot, murdered, you know, their brains blown out, you know, just madness that goes hand in hand with that way of life, kids, you know. It ain't no joke. You know, sooner or later you're gonna get got. You can't always win all your wars. Sooner or later there's always somebody bigger and badder. Like the saying goes, it ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. Basically, that's what it all boils down to. Sooner or later, once again, you're gonna get what you got coming. And like I said, you know, you can't win all your battles. And yeah, I won most of them, but I ain't gonna lie. But in the end, you see I have a bullet in my spine to this date. They never removed it. It's still there. You know, I have problems problems breathing because of the bullet punctured my lung and I got shot. And they had to insert a chest tube into my lung, and that caused my lung to collapse. So I have trouble breathing because I only have a half a lung on this side of my body, on the left side. Um, all those scars and battle scars and bullet holes and stab wounds, all that goes hand in hand with that way of life. It's not an easy way of life to live, basically is what I'm getting at. And so when I started hitting the juvenile halls, I was already a member of the LiL'Mando'Loco gang. We had a lot of enemies as well as the Asian gangs that we were going at it with. The Tiny Rascal gang, and the Asian boys, and the Sons of Samoa, all those different Asian gangs. We were going at it with them real heavy as well. So there was a lot of killings in between our neighborhood, Longo, which is a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. Yeah, we have a couple of blacks and we have a couple of whites, but it's mostly Chicanos, Mexicanos, and we were at war with these Asian gangs, and the Asian gangs, they have a lot of guns, so there was a lot of killing going on back and forth between the two different races, and then it jumped off with the African American gangs as well, and then just like all hell broke loose. Everybody was just getting shot, stabbed, or, opposed with that way of life. And I saw a lot of my homies dying right in front of my eyes. I picked a lot of them up and tried to save them when I could, but you couldn't save everybody. A lot of times they just bled out or just died on the spot. I have a lot of flashbacks from that way of life. When I'm sleeping, I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat because of the violent way of life that I lived at one time. It all comes back to haunt me. I'm pretty much, I've been out 17 years from prison. Haven't been back to prison since. Pretty much, I just changed my old way of life. I moved away from Long Beach. I moved here to Vegas. I started training fighters here. I got to work with a lot of big name fighters, including Canelo Alvarez and a lot of other big name fighters that I trained here in Vegas and that I worked with. I didn't train Canelo, but I did work with him a little bit. I did work with his camp. He was there daily while he was here in Vegas at our gym. I helped get his camp ready for the Sugar Shane Mosley fight, which was his first biggest fight here in Vegas. I was part of that camp. I came on television with him on Televisa Deportes, which is an international TV organization. They're viewed all over the world, and it's mostly in Latin America, but yeah, they're international. And I came out on television with him, and then later on I did other interviews on other news channels like 8 News Now and just different Las Vegas news channels. I went back home, did an interview in Long Beach, California at the Queen Mary, which got hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube right now. I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but I'm not trying to get famous. I already been on YouTube and all that. I've already done big interviews with big name fighters like Canelo. There's no need for me to try to make a name for myself on the internet. I'm doing this just to let the kids know what they're headed for. So when I started going through the camps, LA County juvenile camps, I was always fighting with my enemies. The dudes from Weedmonds, Hawaiian Gardens, even Westside Longo at the time. We used to fight with them guys all the time. We had a lot of enemies, just different gangs in the Los Angeles Harbor area, which is Longo, Long Beach, Wilmington, San Pedro, Harbor City, Torrance, Carson. All those neighborhoods are right there in the port of Los Angeles Harbor area. Um, so I was always getting into fights with all them dudes when I was going through the camp programs, the boys' homes and placements. I started young. I started at the age of 9 going to Sycamore Boys Home in Altadena. It's a boys' home, and we'd had to go to school up there in Pasadena. And the kids that were from that school knew we were from the boys' home, and they would be like, "Those are the kids from the boys' home." And they would try to talk down on us, and we would end up fighting with them. Uh, we were all different neighborhoods that were at that boys' home, but we all stuck together, and we would fight against different uh, kids that went to that school in Altadena that we were going to. They made us go to school over there, and so once again, the kids knew that we weren't from there, that we were just at the boys' home there, and so they would like try to pick on us, and we would always fight back. So that's where the gang life really kind of started for me, was in the boys' home, because we had to be like a gang to fight against these kids that were from that area, which is North Side Pasa, East Side Pasa, South Side Pasa. That's the kids that go to that school, the gang that go to that school that we were at in Pasadena. So, I learned how to fight as a gang against these other gangs. And I was like 9 years old at the time. Yeah, I was 9 years old. So when we moved to Long Beach, I started going to camp as well. I was going to Camp Kilpatrick, the Gridiron Gang, where you guys are in the box and all that. That's Camp Kilpatrick. That's where I was at in my first camp term. Then I was at Gonzales, Rocky. Uh, I was at first I went to Camp Munns, which is an open camp, and I got rolled up for fighting. They sent me to Kilpatrick, Rocky, Gonzales. Let me see what this call is that's coming in. I don't want to take that call. So basically, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I started, from Camp Kilpatrick. I went to Camp Gonzales, Camp Rocky. Those were security lockup camps. I stayed in those camps because I was always fighting, so I had to be locked down in a security lockup camp where they have a box, a hole, what we call it, state prison, the hole. Like say, back in those days, during the holidays, they would count the box. We put you in the box. So I needed to be close to a hole, the box, because I was always fighting. I got my nose broken at Camp Gonzales fighting with some kid that my homeboy Gypsy. I got into a fight out on the, dorm living area, general population, and then he got sent to the box for fighting with Gypsy, and that's where I bumped heads with this kid. His name was David Bradvika. He was a biker dude. He was a big kid. He was like almost 18 years old already. It was Gonzales was a senior lockup camp for the older kids, and I was only, uh, what, 12 years old, 11 years old. So I got into a fight with him in the showers, and there was blood everywhere because there was running water, and I was bleeding from the nose. So there was blood everywhere. And one of the staff members that ran to break us up, he slipped in all that water and blood, all the fluids that were on the ground from my blood and from the shower nozzle. He slipped and he fell, and so they ended up sending us to outside court for that fight. And while at the hall, some African American kid and Hispanic kid were in the day room with us. He was sitting in the corner over there. There was a counselor sitting by him and one sitting by me over here in this corner. They had to separate, so they had to separate it. And the black kid and the Hispanic kid were going to YA. They were waiting for the man to come pick them up from juvenile hall. And I started talking to them, and they're like, "What happened to your nose?" Because they could see that, I had just had my nose broken, and because I had like tape over my nose. And I told him that dude over there, I got into a fight with him, and he broke my nose. And they're like, "That big kid over there," and I'm like, "Yeah." So they said, "Oh, we're going to YA. Fuck it, we ain't got nothing to lose." And they got up and rushed that fool. And so I threw a chair at him in the process as well, and I hit him with the chair. So when I went to court, the judge said, "Well, yeah, you threw a chair at him, but you broke his nose. You're almost 18 years old. He's barely 11. Um, Me, I was barely 11 years old." So the judge said, "That's mutual combat, and just leave it at that." And I had to go to YA on a 90-day observation. And after getting released, I went back for a stolen car. Me and my homeboy Little Joe, rest in peace. He went to YA, and so did I. I went to YTS, which is high security YA because of my gang activity, fighting in the halls and what have you. In the juvenile halls, the judge looked at all that and said, "I see you like to fight a lot, so I'm putting you in lockup." Why my homeboy Little Joe went to Nellis, which is open dorm living. I went to a one-man cell living called the Youth Training School in Ontario, California, YTS. And it was really bad over there. I mean, I was like fighting all the time because of my enemies. At the time, they had just killed a dude from West Side Bongo on the yard there, the dudes from Hawaiian Gardens. And I was one of the first dudes from Longo that they let go back to YTS at the time. And so there was very few of us there. So you can just imagine all the fights that I was getting into because it was already a lot of dudes from Hawaiian Gardens there, the ones that were involved in killing Little Joe from the West Side. That's another Joe, not the Joe that I got arrested with. That's Little Joe from the East Side. They killed a dude named Little Joe from West Side Longo, the dudes from the Gardens. And like I said, they didn't let no dudes from Longo onto the YTS trade line for many years after that murder. So when I got there, I was like one of the first to be allowed back on YTS trade line, where you go to trade, vocational trade. So I was fighting back there in the trade line all the time, even with my broken leg. I had a broken leg because we got into a fight at SRCC Norwalk. It was a riot, and I ended up getting my leg broken. Some big kid fell on my ankle and broke it in a fight that we were having in the yard. Youth training, Youth Authority, SRCC Norwalk, Southern Reception Center and Clinic, Norwalk. It's a reception Y. It's where you go before you go to YTS or Nellis or wherever. It's like a guidance center for the adult authority. That's what SRC is. It's a reception center. That's why it's called Southern Reception Center and Clinic, SRCC Norwalk. And so when I got to TS, I had a cast on my leg from that incident. So even with a broken leg and crutches, the kids weren't showing me no mercy. They were like, "F Longo," and blah blah blah, and this and that. So I was like, "F you and F your body," and I was fighting with them, even sometimes hitting them with my crutch because I, was with a broken ankle cast, and I still had to fight with the cast and all. They didn't care. It was like, you're an enemy and you got a cast on. Fuck all that. You still gotta fight with us. And so they would disrespect me and I would disrespect them, and it was on and cracking. So after I got out of YA, I went to state prison and in the adult authority, and I just kept going from one exit to another because I slipped my handcuffs while I was in the exit unit and stabbed a rival crip going out to their yard because we walked to separate yards, and I hid in this room, classification room, and ended up stabbing one of them when they were coming out to their yard because we were at war with them at the time. And it got nothing to do with the race. It's all gang related, growing up in that way of life when you're pushing that line. That's all due to gang territory and gang politics. Basically, it has nothing to do with race, so don't get it wrong. It's not like the blacks that are at war with us are racist or we're racist because we're at war with them. It's just part of the freaking the business, you know. When you're fighting a different gang, whether it be Northerners, Mexicans, American Northern gangs, or us, the Southerners, or that be the Crips or the Bloods or the Asians or whoever it is you're fighting with. It just has nothing to do with race. It's all gang politics once again. So while I was at prison, uh, I was going from one exit unit to another. They kept transferring me around because they didn't want me in Palm Hall anymore because I had slipped my cuffs twice. Once, while I was in another prison, I got into a fight with the guards because they disrespected me and pushed me into the wall to search me. And I had just told him, "Don't put your hands on me. You can search me, do what you got to do, but show some respect," because he had already been pushing other inmates around. And I had said to myself, "If he ever does that to me, we're gonna fight." And sure enough, came one day when I was walking a chow, and he said, "Get up against the wall." And I warned him. I said, "Look, you can search me once again, do what you got to do, but don't put your hands on me like you do those other inmates, because I'm not gonna stand for it." And he told me, "Shut the fuck up, stupid," and he pushed me. And when he pushed me into the wall to search me, I turned around and I hit him in the face with my fist, and we started fighting. And then his partner jumped on my back, and I ended up flipping with him on my back forward, and he fell over my shoulder, and I fell as well. And we were just on the ground fighting. They're both trying to hold me down, and we're fist fighting. That didn't go over very well because they sent me to higher custody from CRC to Chino prison, which is higher custody. The goon squad was waiting for me in a big circle. Big dudes, a special unit right here. They're all like 6 foot and over to be a special unit. They were putting on gloves. I'm like, "Is this the dude that is getting transferred from CRC from fighting with staff, with correctional officers?" "Yep, this is him." So they just were waiting for me, the welcoming party. They threw me from one guy to the next in the circle. Big old dudes, man. Just fucking me up with gloves on. And after they beat me down, they threw me around the circle. They all took turns beating me up while I was handcuffed. The sergeant came and said, you no longer answer up to Longo, you answer up to Bulldogs." And at the time, the Bulldogs were going at it with the Northerners, the Fresno Bulldogs. So I already knew there was, going to be drama when the guard told me that you're no longer from Longo, you're a Bulldog now. So get up, Bulldog. And he walked me to a cell. And when he walked me to the cell, they put me. They let one of the hallway officers walk me to the cell. He had no knowledge of what had just happened at R&R and the cages back there where the guards. It's called the reception center. He had no knowledge of what had just took place, and I wasn't about to tell him. So he was just walking me to the cell. With, the record, the jail record card said to house me, and it happened to be a Northerner. He was washing the socks facing the wall, and I walked up on the catwalk with the guard, and when he opened the cell door behind him, he was washing the socks in the sink. I didn't see the norteño on his chest yet until I walked into the cell. And when they closed the gate behind me, the guard, I was waiting for the handcuffs to come off. They didn't come off. He turned around, and that's when I saw norteño across his chest. And he goes, "Where you from?" I said, "Longo." He said, "Chale," and he took off on me. He said I couldn't be there because he was a northerner. The Southerners, we had beef. So I started defending myself the best I could. Being that my hands were handcuffed behind my back, I fell on the bottom bunk, and then he went to hit me, and I kicked him in the face with the heel of my foot, and he went flying into the corner where the toilet is, and he fell on, sitting position on the toilet. I hit the wall pretty hard because I kicked him as hard as I could with the heel of my foot. And so I got up and I rushed the corner of the cell where the toilet is, and I started kneeing him and kicking him. And when he got up, I headbutted him, and then I heard the back door, the gate open, and then the guard grabbed me from the back of my jumpsuit and pulled me out. And I hit the gill gate. He slammed the cell door closed, and he started apologizing. He said, "I didn't know you were Southern." He was Northern. He goes, "Look, this came from the reception. I mean, the booth, control booth. This bed move, cell move came from them. I'm just moving you to where they told me to move you to." I'm like, "Don't worry, I know. It had nothing to do with you. That's all from those guards at the welcoming party that just jumped on me in the R&R there. I know that was all them, so I'm not tripping on you." And as they're walking me to the medical treatment associate, MTA they call it, to get checked, because anytime there's a physical altercation, they take you to medical and they check you out. So on the way there, I knew they were gonna walk the northern dude down the hallway as well, because he had to get checked too, because I kicked him and kneed him and what have you. So they take me to medical, and I refuse treatment. The nurse is, "All right, you're all right." I'm saying, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong with me." She's like, "Okay, get him out of here. Bring in the next guy." As they're walking me out on this side of the hallway, on the other side of the hallway, he's walking down. I'm walking up this way on this side of the hallway, and on the other side of the hallway, he's walking down. One up, one down. One side goes up, one side goes down. And Mejia, the lieutenant, is escorting me back. I didn't have leg irons on or nothing, and he's talking to me like, "What happened? Why did you fight in the cell with that dude and this and that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know nothing. Blah blah blah." At the same time, I'm slipping my handcuff. So when he got like right next to me, I had already came out of my cuffs. And the Lieutenant Mejia, he said he just saw my karate shoes on the floor by themselves and me running across the hall. And I jumped on the dude that, jumped on me while I was handcuffed. And I said, "How you like it, motherfucker, to get jumped on when you're handcuffed?" Because he was handcuffed now, and I wasn't. I had to my cuffs, so I got in a few shots, and they tackled me. They said it was NFL tackle of the week. And the guard went to the control booth and had them through the booth little door slot there, had them hand them some leg irons, and he brought the leg irons out. They cuffed me back up, but they put the leg irons in one cuff on one ankle, the other cuff on the other, and they walked me back to Palm Hall Overflow, which is Cypress Hall Overflow Palm Hall, because Palm Hall was full, so I had to wait for a cell opening. That's the whole Palm Hall, as I say, administrative segregation. So I mean, this all happened in one day when I got jumped in the, by the welcoming party and all those gooners, the guards, putting gloves on in a little circle inside the reception center. They had just jumped me there, and then they put me in a cell with a northerner. I got jumped on by him. All this happened at the same time, the same day, just like an hour prior. All this took place. And that's just the way that I live my life, going in and out of those prisons. Another time I was on an exercise yard and over some weights. This dude wanted to take the weights, and I'm like, that back then they had weights on the yard. They had boxing programs on the yard. Now they took all that away. There's none of that no more. But back then in the late 80s, there was uh, weight piles. So this dude tried to take the weights, and because he was a big, you know, giant African American dude, he thought I was just gonna let him punk me for the weights. And I told him, "You can use the crowbar," because there's only two of them. I said, "Once I'm done with it, I only got a few more sets. You can have it." But he decided to. He was like, "Fuck that! I want it now," and he just grabbed it. He took it off the ground. So I had to do what I had to do. And when he got a piece, he threatened to slam me all over. He goes, "I'm gonna slam your punk ass all over the dorm at yard recall." He goes, "You think you're badass, huh?" He goes, "Watch, you'll see. What's up, you little punk," and this and that. And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." I went and got a piece from the barber, Coachella. He gave me a piece, and I waited for them to call yard recall. That means we all have to go back to our, designated dorms. And I waited for him right there by the dorm. And when he's walking in to go to the dorm, I ran up and I whacked him. I I stabbed him. My homeboy Cyclone was there from Cyclone, Roberts. He was there and he saw what happened. He had my back and I just told him, don't get involved. I got this, homie. So I did what I had to do and he took off running. And I chased him across the yard and the gunner didn't see any of it. He was inside the little gun booth. And he wasn't really tripping because it's a level 2 yard, you know. There's really nothing happening there. But you do have guards in these little shacks, guard shacks up on the catwalk. But none of them saw it. I chased him across the yard. He ran straight to the unit office. Next thing you know, a sergeant, lieutenant come out of the unit office. They walk right up to me and they say, "You get on the ground." I did as they said. The gunner on the walkie-talkies like put one in the chamber and keep them in their sights at all times. They had me like this, the Mini 14. He's like, "Get down on the ground." I did as he asked me because it was all over. I did what I had to do. The shank was already gone. I had handed it off to somebody. They cuffed me up and put me in this catwalk waiting for the van to come take me to higher custody, which is Tuolumne Prison, right down the road there. It was a new prison that had just opened up. As a matter of fact, I opened the Ag Seg unit. And so when I'm waiting for the van, my homeboy comes with Dopey from Torrance and all them dudes. The homies came up to the little dog run where they had me behind the gate. And they're like, "We're going to jump it off, homie. It's not going to stay this way. We're going to, all of us, get off right now as soon as they call yard recall again." Because that incident happened, so they had everybody down on the yard. So they finally let them up, and they were calling dorm by dorm. That's when they walked up to the gate there where I was waiting for the van to come pick me up. I was all shackled up. They go, "We're going to take off." I'm like, "Nah, you guys ain't got to do all that. It's already over with. I got the fool that disrespected. No, we're going to handle this shit." And they did. It jumped off, so now I got a whole dog run full of homies. We're all going to Tuolumne. We opened that Ag Seg unit. But see, this is the kind of shit that you have to get involved with, you know. When I hid in that room, in the classification room, and I stabbed that rival that was coming out to yard, we were at war with, that was a crazy freaking move right there. To this date, they still talk about it. When I was parolee, one time I was in a stand-up cage, it's a little cage where you can't even sit down. You have to stand up in there because it's so small. And there's chicken wire like that all over the bars. And you're just in this little stand-up cage by yourself. I was waiting to parole. And they brought in a tour to Palm Hall of a bunch of kids from the college, Chino College, somewhere around in that area. Chino, California. They brought a tour in. I guess they're trying to make these kids cadets, next, generation, correction officers or whatever. So they gave them a tour of the prison, and the lady's talking about it. She's like, "Dude hid in this room right there. He came out of his handcuffs here in the Ag Seg unit, and when his enemies were coming out to yard, he came out of there and stabbed one of them." And I'm like, "Hey, Steinberg," that was her name, Steiny. She's a sergeant now. I go, "What's up?" And she's like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Me, Zambrano, the guy you're talking to the tour about, the one that hid in the room." She's like, "What? Oh, wow, what a trip. He's right here, kids. You guys can ask him questions. Is it all right, Mr. Zambrano, they ask you questions?" So the kids were asking me, like, "How did you do that? Come out of your cuffs and all that." Anyway, so, I give him a little bit of small talk, what have you. But when I got out, the cops pulled me over, and I was with my daughter's mom, Rosalie, at the time. And the cop told her, "Your old man right here is a legend. We just got word from the guards at Chino that he had slipped his handcuffs and hid in a room and stabbed one of the rivals." They still talk about it to this date. And it's like, it's a legend. They're at the Chino prison, the Palm Hall unit, the Ag Seg unit, because nobody had ever done that before. A move like that where you come out of your handcuffs and hide in a room and wait for your rivals to come out to go to the yard, and then you come out and stab one of them. Nobody had ever done that. So basically, he's telling her, like, he's a legend, old man Mondo. They will always talk about him while that prison is open. They will always bring his name up in that unit. And he didn't even search us or anything. He's like, "I'm not here to search you guys. I'm just letting you know what's up with your old man here." And then he's like, just keep your nose clean, Mondo, and we will have no problems, right? And I'm like, yeah, we won't have no problems with the officer. He left and he didn't search us. Thank God, 'cause she was carrying my gun. Just walked off and did her thing, but yeah, uh, to this day they still talk about that move. And just things like that you have to get involved with. You think you're just gonna go to prison and program. It doesn't work that way. Because you have, the white mafia, the black mafia, and you have the Mexican mafia too. And they all run those prisons for all the different races. The blacks are the BGF, the whites are the Aryan Brotherhood, the comrades we call them. And then, because they have the same enemies as us, we're kind of like on the same page when it comes to that. So they call us camaradas, we call them comrades. And then you have the Mexican mafia, which runs all the southern Hispanic gangs, and then you have the Nuestra Familia, which is the northern mafia, prison mafia that runs the northerners, the gangs from Northern California. It's Mexican American gangs. The southerners, sureños, that's the inmate, the Mexican mafia, and then the Nuestra Familia is for the norteños, the northerners. And then you have, different little others that also have the little cliques in there, like the Native American brothers. They have their own little clique where they go to the little sweat lodge. They have their own little knives and shanks that they have for them, for their people, if something needs to jump out. And then you have the Asians, and they have their own little clique and their own little stash of knives on the yard. Everybody has a different race, has a gang that is in charge of their race. So you can't just go to prison and think you're not gonna ride. No, you're gonna ride. You're gonna put your work in. You're gonna earn your stay on that yard. Whatever race you are, you're gonna run with that gang, and you're gonna put in work for them. That's just the way it is. There's no other way about it. Unless you want to just be a Christian and walk the yard by yourself with a Bible, and then when it does jump off, if you're a white Christian or a brown Christian or a black Christian, and something's jumping off with that race, they're gonna stab you because you're by yourself. You happen to be that same color of that gang that they're, they're feuding with, they're warring with. So they're gonna get you because you're by yourself and you're just an easy target. So once again, you have to be involved in some type of gang, whatever race you are. You have to be involved with that gang. So when we're doing all this in prison, putting all this work in the county jail, I'm walking around after visiting with the blade in my mouth, and every Asian I see walking down the hallways, I'm making them take off his shirt. I'm telling them, come here, I want to talk to you, follow me, and I make them go into the stairwell with me, and then I make them take off their shirt. And if they had whatever gang, TRG or Asian boy or whatever on them, I would cut them right there. When all this is happening, I'm still mainline. But after this one incident came down where I went to court, and one of my rivals was talking about how he did a drive-by on us. His name was Tracy Wesley. He was talking about, how he did a drive-by shooting on my homies, and I'm listening to all this. It's just me and Lobo from Barrio Viejo, Isalongo, Barrio Viejo, and a dude named Pee Wee from Downtown Stoners, a white dude that had Longo on his stomach. He was a stoner. And then a couple of dudes from Weedmaz and a dude from Venice. That was it. And just only a few Chicanos in that holding tank for court. And there was like 30 Crips. And so this dude's loud talking about how he blasted because it was 30 of them and only two of us from Longo. And then a couple of dudes from Weedmaz, a dude from Venice, and the white dude. Pee Wee, the homie Pee Wee, was with us. And that was it. So they felt empowered. So it was way more of them, and he was bragging about it. Yeah, I shot up the chongos, and I'm like listening to this, and I finally got up and I said, check this out, I'm from Mongo, fool. You got beef with my neighborhood. I said, you didn't do shit, but I'm gonna shoot a little kid. That's it. You didn't kill nobody when you did that drive-by on the homie Playful's pad. You almost shot their little brother. Shrapnel hit the little brother, and that's it. I said, so, or a piece of glass or whatever it was that happened from when you did the drive-by. You didn't kill nobody. You just almost killed a little kid. So don't brag about it because you you ain't shit, punk. And so he said, what's up? You want to handle business? I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So he's like, all right, cuz everybody get up on the benches that go along the wall, the benches. He had them get up there. He goes, so we can have the floor because we're going to fight. And he's a martial arts expert. And I'm a boxer. So you can just imagine the kind of fight that we put up in that holding tank. And then the next day, they brought us back to court. We didn't take us to court that day because we both got maced. You know, the guards ran up in there, separated us. We didn't go to court. So the next day, we're both training trial. They brought us back and we got into it again. But see, the third day that I'm training trial, I took a shank with me. And because he had told the white dude, Pee Wee, rest in peace, he got killed in Folsom Prison in a riot up there. Pee Wee did, rest in peace. He had told Pee Wee, when I see your homeboy Mondo, I'm going to stab him, fuck all that, I'm going to get his ass. And so Pee Wee told me this, and I was like, all right, check this out, I'm gonna get him now for threatening my life like that. I'm gonna shank his ass. So I took a shank with me the next day to court, and I ran up in the holding tank where they made us blue bands K2 and K3, so they would put us in the same cell or same floor. He was a K2, that means he would stay on the second floor. I was a K3, that means I would go on the third floor, cell blocks. They wouldn't put us on the same floor because they didn't want to fight anymore. See, so they put him in the K2 holding tanks, which was a court tank, but they would leave the gate open. So I ran up in there and I got him. I whacked him and I said, all right, motherfucker, you talking about you gonna stab me? Check this out, motherfucker. Boom, I got him. So alarm went off, 415 inmates only, Long Beach court holding tank. All the guards ran in there, separated us. And then as they're walking me like this, he got one arm up like this, and another guard has my other arm. They're walking me to the little, cell that where they search you. It's a little tiny cell in IRC. And then I hear 415 inmates only again. Pee Wee, the white dude, he ran up in there too and stabbed them because he had disrespected Pee Wee. He told me, yeah, you too, white boy, I'm gonna stab you too if you keep trying to run around with these punks from Chongo, from Longo, disrespecting us. If you try to run around with these dudes from Chongo like you're doing, I'm gonna stab you too. So Pee Wee took that to heart and he got him too. So that second 415 inmates only call was him, Pee Wee, running up in the cell and he got him too. So they slammed us in the high power module. From that point on, I was always slammed in the high power module. All my days of walking the hallways and getting the enemies that had the green light on them, whether it be the Asians or whoever, all that came to a stop once they put that red band on me and they K10 me, keep over me, because of my violent way of life. So when all this is happening, I'm in prison, and like I said, they're moving me from one AGSEG unit to the next. They just kept moving me from one. I go from Delano AGSEG, administrative segregation, from AGSEG to Wasco AGSEG, from Wasco AGSEG to Soledad AGSEG, from Soledad AGSEG, and so my property kept following me around. It kept getting lost. They were just fucking with me, the guards, because they didn't like me coming out of my cuffs and all that. So they didn't want me to get comfortable too long in one AGSEG unit, so they would send me once again to different AGSEGs. Next thing you know, I'm on the bus going to Calipatra AGSEG, which is a level 4 yard. Then I'm on my way to Corcoran. And they're in that AGSEG, that shoe. I'm just getting transferred around like that from one prison to the next. And I was also doing a lot of crazy shit in those AGSEG units as well, coming out of my cuffs. Even though they had already wrote it in my file that I could come out of my cuffs, they weren't enforcing it. They kept just putting me in regular handcuffs, and I kept doing the same thing in those other prisons, sleeping in my cuffs, rushing the enemies. I was pushing that line real tough, And so when I'm doing all this, I parole. And when I parole, I go to the Chicano Action Services, CAC, Chicana Action Services, and they also work with Chicanos, and I get a job developer named Mr. Reduzco, and he says, what have you done in prison? And I'm like, nothing, just fight gang wars all my life. And he's like, what about when you were in juvenile camp? And I said, when I was in juvenile camp, I was in a firefighting camp named Camp Mendenhall, and I learned how to fight wildfires while I was there. And he's like, oh, that's a perfect job to look up them, and he went online to usforestservicejobs.com, and that's where I submitted my OF306 application for federal employment as an ex-felon. No, he's like, I told him I'm ex-felon. They're not gonna hire me as a federal employee. No way. The USDA Forest Service is not gonna hire an ex-felon. He's like, wrong, Mr. Zambrano, and he spun the computer. Those big computers back then. He spun it around, and it was 2001. He goes, see at the bottom of the page it says EOE. That means Equal Opportunity Employer. He goes, they hire ex-felons. So I said, okay, what the hell? He had this girl named Claudia, real pretty Chicana, helped me submit my OF306 application for federal employment online. So we submitted it electronically. We sent it to Boise, Idaho, our headquarters. And next thing you know what? I get a certification letter saying that they're considering me for the job. That I had to find my way up to Arcadia, California, to a ranger station up in Arcadia called Little Tahunga, Little T. I went up there, met with Dave Conklin, the battalion chief for the Angeles National Forest. He said, you're going to have to take a pack test, you put on a 50-pound vest, a 75-pound vest, and you hike around the Rose Bowl, and you only have so many minutes to do it. If you don't do it on the first try, you can get a second try. You can come back the next day and do it, but you get 2 tries only for that fire season. If you don't make it a second try, you're not going to get hired that season. I did it on the first try. That's how bad I wanted the job. I hiked around the Rose Bowl with the vest on, an engine crew next to me with the water and the stop clock timing me. I did it, and next thing you know, the battalion chief walked up and he said, "You're now an official employee of the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service. Congratulations, firefighter Zambrano." And he put his hand out, and I shook his hand. I got teared up because I was happy. I was like, man, I can't believe this. I'm going to be a federal employee. So I asked him to let me use his cell phone. Back then it was a big walkie-talkie looking like, cell phones. They look like walkie-talkies with a big ass antenna. He handed me that and he goes, yeah, call your mom. So I called my mom in Vegas. She was already living here in Vegas. And I told her, guess what? I got hired by the Forest Service. I'm going to be a firefighter. So they had planned to put me on an engine crew like they do all new employees of the Forest Service. Your first fire season, you go to an engine crew. And he said, I have different plans for you, Mr. Zambrano, because you did the pack test on the first try. That means you can hike. You got strong legs. And the hot shots can use you. So instead of going to an engine crew at Little Tahunga, we're going to the Beravite hot shot crew. And that's where I was sent. And when I got to that ranger station, it was called the Beravite Ranger Station in Santa Clarita, California, to the fire barracks there, the Beravite Ranger Station fire barracks, where they house the hot shots and the engine crew number 18. They're housed at the same fire barracks. They were all out on assignment. When they got back, I heard somebody, I was doing a written exam. You have to watch 40 hours of videos, and after each video you do a written exam. And if you don't pass the exams, you don't get picked up that season. So after the 36 hours of videos, I take that back, not 40, 36 hours. I watched every video, did a written exam. I passed all that with flying colors. When the hot shots came back, I heard one of them say, "Hey, little Mondo, what's up?" And I turned and I looked, and the dude was full of ash. He had just got back from a fire assignment. I didn't recognize him. And he tried to clean up a little bit with his bandana, and he goes, "You recognize me now?" I'm like, no, I really don't, homie. I go, but only person that calls me Little Mondo is the homies. And he goes, like, yeah, I'm a homie. I'm Bugsy, Navarro's brother, little brother, the one that used to, run off the block with my brother Russo. And you introduced him to Cuddy. Him and Cuddy had a daughter, Selena, and your daughter, Haiti, and her are first cousins. I'm like, oh, wow, what a trip. So anyway, he's the one that pushed me through my PTs, my physical training, and then my critical training, where right before fire season starts, officially in May for the U.S. Forest Service, you have to be in tip-top shape. It's called critical training, where we hike through the green with full gear, backpacks, helmets, a tool in our hand, all that, chainsaws, cigs full of gas. We hike through the green with all that. That's called critical training. And in order for me to get hired, I had to pass with flying colors as well, the critical training. It's just a whole bunch of different steps you have to take before you become a wildland firefighter, type 1 wildland firefighter for the feds, for the U.S. Forest Service. So I had two females on the crew, which was Heather, a white chick, and then Marcela, which was a Chicana. She was from Fresno, and she was stationed at the Angeles National Forest, but she originally lived in Fresno, California. Those two females were really nice. They helped me a lot. They helped. Marcela wouldn't go home on her 2 days out because she didn't want to drive all the way to Fresno from the Angeles National Forest, Santa Clarita, California, which is Southern Cal. She didn't want to drive all the way up to Central California back home for her 2 days out, so she would stay at the station. And she would say, Mondo, don't go out on your 2 days. Stay here at the station with me and hike. She was a real pretty Chicana from Fresno. She would hike with me, just me and her. We would take off and just hike all the way up to the water tower. And she said, critical training is going to be a bitch. She goes, I've been with the Forest Service now for my 7th season. With your homeboy Bugsy. Me and him have been on the same crew, Bear Divide Hot Shots. And critical training ain't no joke, so you're going to have to get ready for all that. And she would hike me. And we would just kick it up there on the top of the mountain by ourselves, just me and her, drinking our bottled waters from our backpack, or our bottled waters that we had on our web belt, or from our camel pack, the little hose that has water in our backpack, camel pack. We drink our water out of there and eat our lunch up there on the top of the mountain. Just me and her, just chilling. And then Heather was a real good co-worker as well. She would help me with my chores every morning. We'd have a list of chores that we had to do at the station, and she would help me. She would be like, oh, I'm going to help you clean the bathrooms, and she would show me how to scrub and everything, the bathrooms down, the men's shower area, the girls' shower, and the females' bathroom. I would help her scrub all that down. Every day we had a different job assignment. We'd have to look every morning. We wake up at 0500, and it would be the chores on the wall of the kitchen, right where you go into the walk-in freezer where we keep all our food for the crew. There would be a list of chores there, and you would look on the chore, and then your name would be at the end of that line. That was chore for the day, whether it be cleaning the bathrooms or the kitchen area or the day room area or the weight room area. Your name was right there, and along with whoever they were partnering you up with that day. A lot of times they would partner me with Heather, because me and her got along real good, or with Marcela, the other female. So I was always doing my chores alongside of her, and they always would put two firefighters that would get along good with each other to do that chore for the day. So as a team, and easy do teamwork. So I became a wildland firefighter, and I was doing really good, going out on different assignments. And then my parole officer at the time, his name was Castro. He had no problem with me being a firefighter. He's like, handle your business, you're doing good. You're a federal employee, you're higher than me. I'm a state level, I'm a state of California parole agent. You're a U.S. Forest Service, Department of Agriculture, Forest Service firefighter. You're federal, you're higher than me. And when it comes to rank, just joking, he was state because he was state level, I was federal. But then he got transferred to a new job at the LA County Jail, offering the parolees, violators, deals. That was his screening officer job now, and he was no longer a parole agent. So I got a new one named Marquez. He had just come off a level 4 prison yard. He had a chip on his shoulder, and he's like, I don't care what Castro approved you for. I'm your parole agent now. You cannot be leaving the state of California or on a FEMA assignment, Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA assignment, to, let's say, a volcano eruption in the Philippines or an earthquake in Mexico. You can't respond as a first responder to any of those emergencies. You have to stay local because you can't leave without written permission. So they ended up he got me fired from my job as a firefighter the following year. So all good things must come to a stop, and I already knew sooner or later that was going to happen. I had a feeling, and it was just a bunch of BS. That one that one parole agent that got me fired, Marquez, he ended up transferring out of Long Beach Unit 1 parole office because the other agents were clowning him, giving him the blues about getting me fired from my job as a firefighter. They didn't agree with him doing all that, and so he ended up getting transferred out of there. I ended up becoming a refinery employee, working the shutdowns and turnarounds for Onyx Industrial Services as a hydroblasting technician, which they make really good money, really big money. The paychecks are huge because you go on turnaround shutdowns. You fly out to Houston, Port Lavaca, Corpus Christi, Texas, and you go with a 10-man crew, and you go out there and you hydroblast alongside other crews. As that refinery is shut down. It's called a turnaround, where you turn everybody around because it's shut down, and you make huge paychecks. I mean, I was making big bucks as a refinery employee, oil refinery employee. But anyway, that's about it for now, kids. Have a good one, all right? Take care.